Welcome to the TCG Pro Show. I'm Brad. I'm joined with my co-host and dad, Don.
Hello.
And this week we have a special guest, Alexis Brinkley, who is the producer and editor of Triad Real Producers. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, if this is your first time listening to the Pro Show, we love to sit down, share interviews of people that work in and around the real estate industry, but not just realtors and not just directly. Alexis kind of has a unique perspective on the real estate industry. Before we dive into today's topic, I do want to share some exciting news with you. We have a brand new CE elective class that is going so well that people are getting such rave reviews about, and we've got an event coming up. So November 14th, we are going to be in Winston at Piedmont Advantage Credit Union for an all-day continuing education event. In the morning, we'll have our regular general update taught by my good friend Mark Saunders. And in the afternoon, we think it's a special treat. We'll be doing our class Superhero Agents, insider tips on home inspections. So we're excited about that. If you're watching the show on Facebook and if there's any quality issues, we're also live over on YouTube. Feel free to post questions in the comments. We'll try to get to them live here, but let's dive right in. So, Alexis, tell us a little bit about what Triad Real Producers is, in case anybody hasn't heard of it.
Well, I thought everyone's heard of it. There's people that haven't, maybe. Anyway, it's a platform that's meant to be a positive way to feature the lives and the careers of our realtors here in the Triad. We tell their life stories, their backgrounds, how they got into the industry, why they're successful, and we host events every few months. So it's a platform that's in a program that's meant to bring the best of the best together in real estate, not only through our monthly publication, but create these moments where there's great FaceTime between the real estate professionals of the community, realtors, and our partners that support the magazine financially.
So I think it's interesting, we are so digitally focused at the Closing Guys. We're video focused and online focused, and it's a print only endeavor, right?
Well, so it has been historically, minus the fact that we do the event. So that's the very human element of what we do. But now we are going digital here in the next month or two. We're still trying to get it off the ground, but there's a digital platform now where the publication will be able to be disseminated to all licensed realtors in the Triad, and they will be able to click on the magazine, on advertisements or on stories and interact with it, go to websites, call phone numbers, find out more info about the folks that they, work closely with. So we are going digital.
I think it's interesting that you guys do print. It's actually a really pretty magazine. We'll show you. You guys probably can't see this on the table. They're really beautiful magazines with wonderful photography. What are some of the advantages to having something like print in a digital world?
The realtors that are featured and the businesses that we feature in sponsor spotlights each month, and the folks throughout the community that we feature, Dr. Cubane's been featured, Tom Conley, the president of the Furniture Market Authority, Victor Jones, who's on City Council in High Point. So the folks that have been featured in this magazine that receive the hard copy of, the hard piece of evidence that they've been honored and their careers have been honored and that their lives have been, their life stories have been told. I think there's nothing that really replaces feeling that in your hands and seeing your name and your face in print. There's nothing that is ever going to replace that, really. Books, they've gone the same way. A lot of people have Kindles and Nooks, but there's still bookstores, and there's still plenty of people I know that will pick up a book and read it before they choose to do the Kindle version. And they say that actually your retention of information that you read in a physical book or physical publication, your mind actually retains the information better than if you're swiping through on a digital platform. Mm-hmm. I don't think it will ever die. And what we do is very social in nature, so it's much different than a transactional kind of print. Yeah.
Well, I think it's really interesting. I grew up reading car magazines. That was one of my favorite things to do as a kid. And, car magazines used to be big, old, thick things. And over the years, they got thinner and thinner. And you saw this real, reduction in magazine, what was actually getting put in. And they all got, lesser. But it seems like recently there's been a resurgence, and I see this in different genres where the magazine print is coming back, but it's different. It's focused more on quality, quality of photography. It's starting to become something you don't just read and throw away. It's something that you read and keep. Is that kind of like what you guys are producing?
Oh yeah. I couldn't tell you how many realtors' offices I've gone in over the past couple of years since we've been in print, and I just, even though I've seen it so many times now, I'm still so fascinated and blown away when I look at somebody's desk and they've got like all the past year and a half or 2 years of these stacked up. I'm like, you keep these? You really keep these? They're like, oh yeah, we keep these. We love these. These are great. These are our peers. It's interesting to read about them and see, the inside story about their lives. And, frankly, I think a lot of people want to know how they can make it to that place, like how they can get on the cover of the magazine. And it is interesting how many folks keep a little library of the Real Producers publications with them. It's an honor, really.
Well, I think probably being featured on it is kind of like a prize. It's like winning a trophy. So you get to have. I mean, there's something to be said for having yourself in something that's actually published. So
what's the process to get to the cover? How is that decided?
There's a couple factors. So there's quantitative merit. You have to be in the readership within that top 300 to 350 ranked in the MLS to be on the cover. And then beyond that, there's peer nomination. And then there's also kind of more qualitative factors like, backstory. We have a group of folks that kind of ranks the upcoming stories on different qualitative measures, and it's difficult. There's some really excellent folks in this industry up there at the top that not only have really cool stories and not only produce in large volume, but that are just really deserving. They've been doing it for 20 years, 30 years, some folks 40 years. And it's hard to there's only 12 covers a year, and it's really difficult to make that decision. But so we try to weigh fairly. And then there's also the different firms to feature. There's Alan Tate and Remax and Keller Williams and individual firms, Chris Collins Realty and so Coldwell Banker. We have to, share the love amongst the different firms. So a few things that go into this, to the balance there.
So it's only agents that would be featured on the cover. Okay.
So at the end of the day, because you're editor, it's your choice who goes on the cover, right?
I mean, ultimately, but we probably shouldn't say that.
I was saying, agents must.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course I have veto power. Yeah, of course. Right.
Oh yeah. I bet a lot of agents. Well, we'll just leave it at that.
Like I said, it can be hard to make everyone happy. Of course, I mean you can't in life do that. But we try to be fair, and we try to fairly feature and to justifiably feature folks for what their value is to the industry.
So over the last couple of years, do you have like a favorite story?
Oh, another hard question. Why are you putting hard ones to me?
Wouldn't be a good interview show if they weren't.
Yeah. Right. I mean, Lord, I have liked so many of our stories because, this is kind of goes back to what Nikki, and she's not formally on here in face, but she's here in name and in spirit. But she asked, I guess to answer your question in a roundabout way, what is common amongst a lot of these folks,
right? Which
is, in a lot of ways, what I find to be my favorite thing about all these stories. And I thought a lot about it after you asked me that. But it's the amount of grit that these people have, and in a lot of cases, a lot of these backstories, a lot of these folks came from really humble beginnings. They weren't fed with a silver spoon, and they had to really work their way up in the world. And I have some really great tales of folks that just came from absolute nothing. Like, for example, Chris Collins, he was a recent story that we did. He's our August issue. And he came from the coal mines of West Virginia. Wow. And he came from very humble beginnings and has worked his way up to the very top of Triad Real Estate. And so I I don't know. I've got tons of great stories. That Chris Pappalardo was in Nashville before he was a recording artist before he got into real estate. That's a fun one. Jason Bramblett was a chef and studied at Johnson & Wales before he is now top of his class in real estate. Linda Faircloth is a beautiful person whose husband is John Faircloth, the senator. They love horses. They're just good, solid, down-to-earth folks, even though they have, wonderful presence in the community and a lot of authority. They're just good, solid people. Stephanie Justice, she nearly died. She has an illness that's a chronic illness, but she overcame it and kept her business strong and alive. And she was willing to tell her story for us, but even though it was difficult, just great testament to humans as a whole, but also to folks in our industry.
So can help me understand. So agents, top producers that are on the cover, what is the purpose of the magazine? What's the other? I mean, I know it tells this story, but it's basically a magazine about agents for agents. What is the purpose
from a business standpoint? Like, what's the purpose?
Yeah. Why would I want it? Yeah. Why would I want as an agent? Why would I want?
From that perspective,
right.
Why would you want to be featured?
No. Why would I want to receive and read this? I mean, you learn the stories about these people, but is there?
I think folks at the top of anything, they're generally not afraid to compare themselves to their peers, some of whom do better, some maybe not doing as well, but to learn from them, to compare themselves to one another, and to grow based on, healthy competition. And I think that for the folks that are willing to be receptive to that, which is a lot of the folks at the top, I think that it's been good moral support because it's not an easy industry. I think that it's helped for them to be able to see these stories of their peers and their struggles that they have. They're very honest in telling their backstories, and I think that is just good impetus for the other folks, in their own efforts to grow.
So encouragement.
I think so.
Well,
I mean, yeah,
go ahead. I was gonna say it's almost like it's a mixture of insight and inspiration for the readership.
Chicken soup for the real estate soul.
I think it humanizes them a lot. It brings the character instead of competition across the table a lot. It really kind of finds. It's almost like
you're not mic'd up, right?
The other thing too, I think, is that a lot of them will order extra copies. They'll order what's called reprint promos for their client presentation. So a lot of them use it to distribute to clients or potential clients. Say, hey, I was on the cover of this magazine. You may want to list with me, or
Yeah. Well, I understand that. What I was thinking was, most people, want to be in something that will actually increase their business somehow. So that's
and I think that
that
exactly. I think that's an element of it, and I think simply it's just much more fundamental than that. It's just nice to see your face and your name in print. Right. I mean, and to know that a lot of folks are aware of who you are, that you exist, and that this is your story.
Sure.
Yeah.
Taking a step back, you talked a lot about the grit that some of these people had. And I think you see that when you look into entrepreneurial stories, that it takes a lot of grit. We had an opportunity to sit down and talk a little bit before we recorded this, and you have such an interesting story because you had to take a leap of faith and you made a big transition. Do you mind sharing some of your story about where you came from and how you ended up running this publication here locally?
Yeah, sure. So I was a real estate photographer prior to doing this, and I was doing it mainly part-time because I was trying to raise my little boys to kindergarten age and be able to be a working mom, but a mom who was present. And my husband was in engineering for 10 years, and it was an unfulfilling occupation for him. And so he wanted to leave it. And I thought to myself at the time, like, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and ramp up my business, can make it full-time. I'm going to do real estate photography so that he can then pursue a different career. And he had ideas, but wasn't quite sure where that was going to end up. And we were having a tough time. And his parents said, you know what, we're going to send you for a weekend to Wilmington. Just go for the weekend and spend some time together and reflect on what you guys want to do. And we had never been, believe it or not, 3.5 hours away, never been. But the morning we were at continental breakfast at our little hotel, there was one other guy in there. We started talking, and I, through talking, realized that he was the younger brother of a guy I went to high school with 18 years ago, and never knew this particular person, but I knew his brother. Hadn't seen him for 18 years, and I said, well, how's Tom doing? He said, well, he's running a really great real estate magazine in Charlotte. He loves it. And I said, oh, well, I'm a real estate photographer. I'm going to reach out to him Monday. So I did, and my hope was to advertise with him, and build up my business. And so we sat down, and he was explaining it to me, and we reconnected after all those years. It was a nice conversation, but as he was talking, my head was going elsewhere, and I was thinking how much I would really love to do this myself.
Yeah.
Never mind the advertising piece of it or my photography piece of it. This would encompass a lot of the things that I naturally liked and am good at. The photography element, which I still do some of.
Right.
I in my past life, I wrote a lot. I have a couple of degrees with heavy writing, intensive elements to it. I like to write, so the editing piece came pretty naturally, and I like people a lot. So it kind of was the culmination of a lot of things for me. So I pursued it. I contacted the publishing company and had interviews, and they brought me on board, and this became my market. And so in the beginning it was difficult, and I think the part that most people find funny, and I don't know what our time is here, but stop me if you need to.
No.
I am trying to make a very long story short. We sold our home, took the equity to start the business, and a lot of people have that kind of story. But it was difficult, but it was something we really wanted. And my husband decided he was going to go to flight school, so we needed funds for that. So we sold the house. We moved out to the Triad, and we rented, and we had a really nice apartment. But my husband kept telling me, we're just flushing our money down the toilet. We should do something different. Why don't we get a camper and live in it until, you build your business up to where we can get a loan. And, he was in school, so neither of us could really get a great loan at the time. So he said, let's just do something different, a little unorthodox, so we can save our funds instead of throwing it away. And I finally broke down. I don't know why or when or what the day was, but something in me I was like, all right, fine, we'll do it. And so we got a camper, and a lot of people probably don't know that, but we lived in it for about a year at Forest Lake Campground in Advance, North Carolina. And I operated a little office out of it between doing that and going to realtors' offices and, hitting the pavement. That was my life for a year. And it became quite a success, I think. And so then we were able to get the loan, and now we have a house. And it's been a real blessing. So that's the long story short of it.
I think that's such a great story because, not just one of you guys made a career change, but you both made a career change. You took a gigantic leap of faith. I mean, I imagine had to felt like into the unknown at times. And, for so many people, their home is that's like a safety. Like, I own my house, it's safe. And you gave that up to pursue something that you thought had a future. And I think that is super cool. And I think it's a story that should be told because there are other people out there that might be in similar situations, and they're wanting to make a change and they're wanting to do something, but there's something standing in their way, like selling their home or. And you told me also that the camper wasn't a bad experience.
It really wasn't. If I had to do life over again, if I get reincarnated and I'm conscious of my past life, I would, if I were young and single and in college or whatever, I would get a camper. I'd live in it, and it is great. The community around you is so cool. At least where we were, it was very cool. There were families with kids. There was one family, and they just agreed to let me run a story on them. The title is going to be like, what is home? What is the concept of home? It's,
right.
It's different to everyone. And anyway, they were a family. They're still there. 8 kids, 8 of their own biological children live in a camper.
Live in a camper.
That was not much bigger than the one we had. And they have 2 dogs. and they are the most well-behaved children, just a beautiful family, gorgeous family. And they've lived there, I don't know how long. It's much longer than we did. A couple years before we got there, and they're still there, and they like it. They prefer it. Now, it's an irony, I know. I'm running a real estate magazine. It's an irony. Life's full of ironies. But what I think is interesting about it is that you can use it as a tool from my point of view, and from what I think a lot of folks could do as young folks. They could use it as a tool to avoid rent, avoid that world and getting further into debt. And, it can be a great living. It's one that's very unorthodox that we're not very familiar with in this country. But in other countries, they do live that way pretty happily for a time.
Well, it's interesting. When we inspect houses, we'll inspect just, a little cracker box house. And big families have been raised in small, compact, homes like that. And, nowadays we think we have to have, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 square feet, just to raise a family. So it's not all that, it's not all that new a concept to be in that small space.
Right.
So. Well, the tiny homes, I think, have a lot of the
same,
the feel that you're
right.
But I imagine a camper's still more comfortable and roomy than a tiny home.
I'm
not sure about the tiny home thing. It kind of freaks me out.
The nice thing about the camper life is that the surroundings, if you're at a decent campground, the surroundings are great. We ended up getting a golf cart, and there's all kinds of trails to ride, and it was right there by the Yadkin River. So you go down to the river. There was 2 pools and like a common area house like that you could go to. So it was like resort living. I mean, low level resort living. There was non-paved roads everywhere, and so there was a lot of grit in the summer that would be up in the air. But so it wasn't glamorous, I wouldn't say, but it was fun. It was fun.
I think there's a lot of people out there that dream about the idea of getting to a point in their life where they can get rid of the normal trappings of life and go do something like that. So cool you guys experienced when your kids were little. It's probably super fun for them.
They still say they miss it.
I bet.
Yeah.
Do you guys still have the camper?
No, we sold it. We made a profit on it, actually.
Okay.
It was a good
So it was a
decision.
good investment.
It was an investment. My husband swore he'd make it one, and he did. I mean, it was...
So if you had a piece of advice that you could share with people, whether it's a real estate agent at the beginning of their career or another entrepreneur starting a business, coming from that experience, what would it be?
Well, I think it definitely has to be tailored to the person and the particular context. But I think in general, one of the most fundamental pieces of advice, I suppose, would be that what feels uncomfortable in the present, it very well, could be the makings of something, very comfortable and right in the future. And it's discomfort isn't a bad thing. And a lot of the people that get to where they are in life, they something very common to all their stories is that they really do go through a period of discomfort, sometimes for years, before they get somewhere where they feel like they've arrived to a place where they're, in the swing of things. And I think my advice to anyone would be not to shy away from discomfort.
I love that. I don't think it could be more true. So before we close, back to the magazine, it's not just the agents that are in there. There's actually vendors in the area. How does that work with them? Is there a qualification to be a part of it, to be a partner?
There's not. I try to make sure that the folks that we bring on board and that we allow to come on board are folks that operate Triad wide. I want it to be beneficial for them to be in front of these folks. Very, very small operations are probably not a good fit for what we do, but anyone that wants to remain in front of top Triad Realtors, which are many, many businesses, aside from just lenders and inspectors and attorneys and builders and such. Even outside of that, we're talking with a car dealership right now that a lot of these realtors lease cars, and there's a restaurant that we're speaking with, that we're in talks with. So any business that finds this group of people beneficial to remain relevant to is can fairly be featured here. And I feel very much indebted to them and grateful that they believed in me, especially the folks that came on board before we were ever in print. I really feel thankful that they believed in the platform before it ever had a hard copy existence. So
part of the advantage to that would be that it is in other areas, and they could see that it is a real.
Yeah, we weren't the
magazine.
first market in print. That did
Right.
help. Yeah.
How long did it take you to get your first?
3.5 months was the period of time it took to ramp up the publication. That was a scary time.
And you weren't from this area, so you had to get used to all
Yeah,
the
yeah, no, I mean, I wasn't from far, but yeah, Lake Norman area, so about an hour and some change. But yeah, that was the tough time, and not everyone makes it during that time when you're building a magazine. That's definitely the real challenge.
So maybe a couple more questions before we sign off. What is the biggest challenge that you face running a magazine like this?
Yeah, the biggest challenge. Well, it depends the day you ask me. Today, I'm doing a lot of event planning for our next event, and those events, they're so large, and thankfully they've just been great, and a lot of that is the partners that we have and the realtors that support what we're doing. But there's a lot to wrap your head around with those things, and today I'm calling around about turkey legs and smokers, and so sometimes the event, there's many little tiny details that people just take for granted if you've never run an event with 150, 200 people.
Sure.
But that actually, I do enjoy that. Something that's sort of tricky for me is probably the sales piece of it. And when I sit down with a business to evaluate whether it's a good fit for them to be a part of the magazine, I want to make sure that I'm a good steward of their resources and I'm doing the right thing by them. I do constantly check myself and make sure that I'm doing that the right way, and that I'm supporting those folks that are making this all possible financially. So that does give me some level of stress, maybe more than other pieces. Something I really do love on the other end of it is, in the same token, is supporting those businesses that are really great businesses that want to support what we try to do positively in this real estate community. So it's kind of a little bit of a catch-22.
Does that say maybe is that your favorite part about doing it?
That's one of them. Yeah. I mean, the positivity period is my favorite piece of it. Being able to connect people in a positive way is not something that I would have thought 10 years ago I'd be doing or capable of doing, but here I am. And I think that I really do. I have come to really love that and love that. I feel like I'm doing something good, I think, in my little piece of contribution of good to the world. There's plenty of people that do better than I do, but at least I can feel like, I think in a lot of respects, I'm doing something very good and positive.
Awesome. So what events do you have coming up?
So November 21st is our Feast at the Castle, and it's at McCulloch Castle.
Okay.
It's going to be, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Our events are, sometimes they're masquerade kind of dress up occasions. This time I'm not requiring that or asking people to dress up, but we had an 80s event for our last event. Tons of people came dressed to impress. We had a
she likes to do
you
that.
like the 80s. I gotta admit, I selfishly that's okay, me too. I selfishly arranged that event. I always wanted to have a great big 80s party.
I saw a video of you driving down the road in your car, like all in costume.
Oh, yeah. I gotta admit, I like that one. But Julian Price, that was an event we did back November 15th of last year. Just noticed on that. Anyway, that was like a 20s, 30s theme, and that was at the Julian Price house. So
I read a little bit about that. That was a really, really cool project.
It was.
So is the event at the castle, is that something realtors should inquire about, or is it like invite only? Or
any licensed realtor is able to come. This time around, we've never done this before. It's always been free. But this time we are charging $10 admission, but it's all going to the Second Harvest Food Bank of Northwest North Carolina.
Cause.
So it hasn't deterred anyone, I don't think. I was worried. I want to keep it free, but I also feel like one time a year at the end of the year, we should be able to ask like for some pocket change to, and it adds up. You get 150 people out there, and it adds up. And some folks will bring their spouse or another realtor in the office. So it adds up. And so, it's open to licensed realtors and our partners, our advertising partners.
How can the agents find out more about the event?
They can email me. It's alexis.brinkley@realproducersmag.com, or they can go to Real Producers, triadrealproducers.com. They can go to the link there and go to the event link. Yeah.
I put it on Facebook. I put it in the comments.
Awesome.
There you go.
So, any other plugs or anything you'd like to mention while we're on?
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I appreciate that you asked. That's very nice. No plugs per se. I've enjoyed it. You asked me a lot of great questions. Can't think of anything you missed.
All right. Well, then we did our job. It's been great having you. I really enjoy your story. I like what you're doing. I like the side of the real estate market that you guys focus on, and telling people stories. We think that's an important thing, your personal connection. So thank you for tuning in to the Pro Show this week. Again, I totally forgot to mention it with our CE class. If you do want to find out more about it, it's at closingguys.com. We are taking registrations. Plus, you can get signed up to find out about all of our upcoming dates. I know nobody wants to have to do CE, but you do have to do it. And we've endeavored to provide a class that gives tremendous value to agents. We were just talking today about some more of the things that we can put in there about preparing for home inspections, spotting red flags, not to make you home inspectors, but the more you know and the more you're able to do, the more value you can bring. So that's how you find out more about that. If you like this, if you enjoyed it, please share it. We'd love to hear your comments and questions. We'll answer them in future episodes. We'll be back next week with a new episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And we'll be back next week. Anything else you want to add, Dad? All right. Bye, guys.
See ya.